Wubba Lubba Dub Dub. This is the phrase that Rick Sanchez says a lot in the first seasons of Rick and Morty. This is a phrase in the bird language, and we are told in the show that it means, I am in great pain, please help me. Now, I don't think that Justin Roiland or Dan Harmon add a lot into conlanging, so I think that this is just a silly phrase that they chose and they didn't thought too much on how these sounds could mean this. But it's gonna be very fun to try to, come up with some logical explanation, some logical grammar that would justify why this phrase has this meaning. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is basically do the things that linguists do whenever they have a new language that they have to decipher. Usually what happens, for example, with the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is this very famous document, actually it's in the British Museum, and it has things written in Egyptian, and then it has things written, well, in handwritten Egyptian, because the hieroglyphics were like their formal writing. And then they have a more practical writing for everyday documents, and then it has things written in Greek. And what happened was that by looking at the translation in Greek, linguists were able to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphics. And we are very lucky because in this case we have a translation of this phrase made by a native speaker, bird person, and so we can be quite confident of what it means. Okay, so the first thing to note is that this phrase, or at least the translation of this phrase, has two verbs, am and help. So it is a good guess to say that this phrase somehow should also have two verbs. And the other clue we have is this, dub dub. Okay, so let's analyze this dub dub more in detail. This is something called reduplication. Reduplication is very common in real world languages. For example, in Swahili, the word piga means to hit, but piga piga means to hit many times or to hit over and over. And so, in this case, what could this reduplication mean? Well, reduplication can mean intensification. And so, looking back at the translation, we have great pain. So if dub means pain, dub dub could mean great pain. Which I like, it seems a good guess. And now we have to decipher what wubba and lubba mean. Well, the two things we need in this phrase is something that announces the state of the speaker, something that says I am, I feel, and another word that is a plea for help. The next thing we have to consider is that this is what is called a compound phrase, and the original must be a compound phrase as well. And so, for example, if wubba was I am, and then lubba somehow meant help, and then this would mean great pain, this would mean that we have a phrase, I am in great pain, that is caught by another phrase, which is help. Now, this is not impossible. Human languages can have phrases broken up by other phrases, like, for example, in this example in English we have the kid was running, which is a single phrase, but in this example is broken by the phrase that I saw, and so we have the kid that I saw was running. So yeah, it could be possible that here we have I am, help, great pain, but it just seems, and here is just a guessing, and when you are translating a language that is up to that point not yet completely deciphered, you have to do some educated guesses and just keep them in mind. Keep in mind that you are guessing, so that if in the future you have some more evidence, you can go back and see if you were right or you were wrong. And so, for example, in this case, I think that it makes more sense to say that loba means something like I am or I feel, and then dub dub is great pain. And then this would mean that loba is a plea for help. Help or please help. From this, we can make some more educated guesses. For example, if wubba and loba are indeed verbs, well, it's very funny that they have the same ending. And if this is announcing, if loba is something like I am or I feel, then we could say that oba somehow is an ending that is correlated with the present tense, right? But then here it also means please help. It's like you are ordering something, like help me, or you are asking for something. So are there orders or requests? Now, for example, in Spanish, we have what is called the present tense, but we also have the imperative. For example, in Spanish, we can say I give is just doy. Doy means I give. But if I'm ordering you to give something, like give it, I can say dalo, which means, well, it's an order, give it. And here you can see that Spanish has very different forms of a verb, depending if it's present tense or an order. But you know what language doesn't do that? English. In English, you can say I give or give it. And yeah, the verb is pretty much the same. The present tense and the imperative are exactly the same. The verb doesn't change. What changes is the context or how you use it. So yeah, it makes sense that oba could be used for both things. Is both used for the present tense and for the imperative. Finally, what about pronouns? Because, I mean, wubba is an order or a request that you are giving to someone else, like help me. But oba is saying how you feel, how the speaker is feeling, right? But this is not such a big issue because, for example, languages like Japanese or again Spanish, let me go back to my Spanish example. Here, you don't need a pronoun. I don't need to put yo. Yo means I. But it's nowhere present. It doesn't have to be present in this phrase in order to indicate who is doing the action. And here I'm giving an order, but again, I don't need to put the word to, that means you, in order to specify that I'm giving this order to you. Similarly, Japanese has pronouns, but very rarely use them. It relies more in context. So, and yeah, it is not I mean, if there is ever ambiguity, Japanese speakers can use pronouns, but most of the time it's perfectly clear from the context, so they don't do that. And I think that's similar to the strategy that birth language is doing. Here, if I'm doing wubba, help, like it's obvious from context that I'm not talking about helping someone. I'm not talking about helping myself because I am in great pain. I'm asking for help because I am in great pain. Although, yeah, I mean, perhaps there is some level of ambiguity in this phrase, and if necessary, I imagine that this language has strategies to be more specific if that's needed. But there is another phrase we have of this language. The other phrase we have is gaba nub nub doraka, which means whatever lets you sleep at night. Here we have yet another case of reduplication. Nub nub. And I think this could be something like if nub means something like something. So something could be like anything at all. or anything, whatever, anything at all. And yeah, and here we see that the GABA has a very similar verb ending to this OBA here. So yeah, it seems that I'm inclined to think that if this is indeed a verb ending, then GABA must be a verb ending too. Which is very interesting because the verb let in English is very interesting because when I know I speak Spanish and English, and I notice that whenever you have the verb let in English, when you translate a phrase to Spanish, it disappears. But what happens is that you change the conjugation of the verb. For example, the famous phrase. For example, the famous phrase in English, let it snow. In Spanish is just que neve. And snow, the verb to snow is here the verb neve. And yeah, what happened to let? What happens is that if I were talking like it is snowing, I would say neva. This means it is snowing. But if I say like let it snow, like it's que neve. So what happens is neve. What happens is that this is the indicative and this is the subjunctive. Which, if you're not familiar, it just means that here I am sure that something is happening. I am seeing it happening. Neva. And neve means, well, I want this to happen, but I'm not sure that it is happening, or I am not sure that it could happen. It just expresses this uncertainty. This is the subjunctive. Well, I don't want to write it, it's a very long word, but subjunctive. And this is the indicative. So this is just to say that I think that for this phrase, the ending oba is the indicative and aba is the subjunctive. So this phrase would mean something like allow, but in subjunctive, like this is something that means something like whatever. And here we have do raka. So the whole phrase again means whatever lets you sleep at night. And we need the word sleep, and maybe not necessarily at night. Maybe the at night is already implicit from the context. But what we certainly need is sleep. It could be one possibility is that do means you and raka is some way of the verb sleep. And here we see that if this is indeed the word sleep, it doesn't have the endings it doesn't have loba or aba, nor any ending that we have any reason to suspect is like a conjugation. So that's interesting because it will be like a neutral form of the verb. It's not in present, it's not an order, it's not a request. We are just talking about the action of sleeping. But here's the thing. This phrase is so pronoun free. And this phrase was very pronoun free up to this point. So I think that maybe the whole language is just what we call a pro-drop language. Pro-drop is just, well, it's just exactly what it means, that you are in favor of dropping words, as many words as you can drop. Because if you omit them, the speakers automatically make some assumptions. That's how Spanish or Japanese can work without pronouns, because just the speakers are already used to making some assumptions whenever you drop a word. And again, if there's ambiguity, you can add the words if needed. And so, in order for this language to continue being pro-drop, to continue not using pronouns unless strictly necessary, I think that the more likely explanation is that though simply means to, which is kind of boring because it's very similar to the word to in English. But I mean, yeah, sometimes languages are similar in surprising ways. And so, yeah, let's just make a summary of the grammar of verb language. So what we know so far is that there are verb conjugations, and there are at least two of them, oba and aba. And we have reason to suspect that this is indicative and that this is subjunctive. We have reason to believe this is a pro-drop language. We have reason to suspect that reduplication means intensity. Like if you repeat a word, you are making more emphasis on what it means. Also, we have reason to suspect that this is a SVO language because, as far as we have seen, the objects, the complements of the verb always come after, although it is possible that it could also be a BSO language. Oh, and I almost forgot, we have also reason to believe that there is an infinitive form of the verb, like the raka we saw, like with no conjugation at all. It's just the verb in an abstract sense, with no moods or tenses attached to it. And so, yeah, this is, I think, everything we are able to deduce about bird language based on the only 2 examples we have. It would be very cool if we see more of bird language in the show and we are able to expand our knowledge of this language and try to keep making more educated guesses. Maybe we realize that we were wrong in something, but maybe we realize that we were right on some other things. Obviously, I'm just overthinking this beyond need. I mean, I'm sure that none of the creators of the show have put this much thought about how this language works, but I found this very fun, very entertaining, and I hope you did too. And if you do, you are a huge nerd. Congratulations. Well, thanks a lot for watching. I'm gonna put some more videos about linguistics over here. Yeah, thanks a lot and have a good time.